classical music isn't for kids from the projects. Professor Julian Sterling's words cut through the heavy silence of the Eastwood Academy concert hall like a jagged blade. Dressed in a bespoke Italian suit, his gold watch glinting under the weight of crystal chandeliers, he glares down at 12-year-old Maya Vance. To him, she is an anomaly, an error in a room built for the elite. Maya stands alone on the vast stage. She is small, her frame swallowed by a borrowed, oversized shirt, but her posture is unyielding. She grips the handle of a battered violin case. The velvet inside is worn thin, and the wood of the instrument is scarred with cracks held together by tape and prayers. Around her, 30 people, board members in silk ties and prodigies in designer labels, stare from their marble seats with a mixture of boredom and disdain. A snicker ripples through the back row. "Maybe try rap instead," someone whispers, and the cruelty is met with immediate, muffled laughter. Sterling adjusts his silk tie, savoring the silence. "We maintain certain standards here, young lady. Standards you clearly don't understand." To everyone watching, the ending is already written. The poor black girl gets humiliated. The wealthy professor wins. The status quo remains untouched. But Maya Vance has exactly 8 minutes to flip the script. 8 minutes to make Julian Sterling choke on his own arrogance. 8 minutes to prove that talent doesn't check your zip code before it chooses your soul. Have you ever been dismissed as worthless, only to shock the world into silence? Our story begins 3 hours earlier, in a world 15 miles but light years away from the marble halls of Eastwood Academy. The alarm screams at 5 a.m. in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on Chicago's South Side. In the small kitchen, the radiator coughs like an old man with pneumonia, rattling pipes that haven't been replaced since the Great Depression. Water stains map the ceiling like forgotten countries, each brown splotch telling a story of bitter winters and humid summers that seep through walls as thin as hope. The air smells like cheap instant coffee and deferred dreams. Mrs. Johnson's television bleeds through the drywall morning news blaring about local violence and politics. Somewhere down the hall, a radiator hisses, and a neighbor's baby starts to cry. But in the narrow gap between the kitchen and the living room, where most families would put a dining table, magic happens. Maya Vance stands with her father's violin, her bow poised above worn strings like a conductor about to summon thunder. The instrument tells its own story through every scratch, dent, and battle scar. The varnish has faded from deep amber to honey brown, worn smooth by decades of calloused fingers. A hairline crack runs along the back, sealed with wood glue and a prayer that it holds together for one more day. Maya closes her eyes and plays Bach's Partita No. 2. The sound fills their cramped world with something larger than physics should allow: soul. "You're gonna wake the whole building, baby girl," Sarah Vance says, emerging from the bathroom. Her hospital scrubs are already wrinkled, smelling of industrial bleach and a night shift that never seems to end. At 38, Sarah carries herself like a woman who has fought every battle twice and won most of them through sheer stubbornness. Her hands are cracked from cleaning surgical floors, her back aching from miles of mopping. But when she watches her daughter play, her eyes shine with something unbreakable: hope. "Sorry, Mama. I just wanted to get one more run-through before the audition." Sarah pours coffee from a pot older than Maya. On the wobbly kitchen table, bills are stacked like accusations beside a mason jar labeled Maya's Music Fund, in careful handwriting. It's mostly empty, save for some crumpled ones and loose change that adds up slower than dreams fade. "You nervous about today?" Sarah asks, her voice steady as stone. Maya sets the violin in its case with the ceremony of a priest handling a holy relic. The purple velvet lining is worn thin, soft as skin from years of use. "A little bit." Today is the scholarship audition at the Belmont Academy of Music, where annual tuition exceeds a decade of their rent. A full scholarship means private lessons in Vienna, world-class mentors, and a ticket out of Englewood. Sarah reaches across the table and squeezes Maya's hand. Her fingers are rough, but her grip is firm. Belmont's got marble floors and trust fund kids with violins that cost more than a house. But they don't have what you have. "What's that, Mama?" "Fire, hunger, and music that comes from somewhere real." Maya looks around the apartment, the peeling linoleum, the secondhand furniture, the window that doesn't quite close. This is what she's trying to escape, but it's also what forged her. Talent doesn't check your zip code before it chooses you, and Maya is ready to prove it. The bus ride from Englewood to the Gold Coast feels like traveling between different planets. As Maya and Sarah step off at the corner near the Belmont Academy of Music, the air itself feels different, crisp, expensive, smelling of lake breezes and high-end perfume. The Academy is a fortress of culture. Massive oak doors whisper of wealth, and marble columns rise 30 feet toward a ceiling painted with scenes from musical history. Crystal chandeliers cast a perfect, unforgiving light across the foyer. Maya's breath hitches. Her black shoes, her only pair of dress shoes, squeak against the polished floors. She feels every eye in the room cataloging her flaws: the oversized shirt, the scuffed heels, and especially the battered violin case held together by black electrical tape. Around them, other applicants look like they stepped out of a luxury catalog. Children of doctors and CEOs sit on velvet chairs, clutching instruments that cost more than a suburban home. One girl with a perfect blonde bob stares at Maya's case and whispers to her friend, their giggles echoing like shards of glass. "Eyes front, baby," Sarah whispers, her hand a steady weight on Maya's shoulder. "You belong in every room you enter." They are ushered into the main concert hall, a temple of sound designed for legends. At the center of the front row sits Professor Julian Sterling. At 58, he moves with the calculated precision of a man who has never had to ask for permission. His silver hair is styled to perfection, and his navy blazer bears the Academy's gold crest. Sterling doesn't look up from his clipboard as they approach. He is busy reviewing the files of the two students before Maya, children of the city's elite. When he finally reaches Maya's application, his lip curls in a subtle, practiced sneer. "Maya Vance? From Jefferson Middle." He says the name of the school as if it were a contagious disease. "Yes, sir." Maya's voice is small but clear. Sterling finally looks at her, his eyes scanning her from her thrift store clothes to the taped-up case. He checks his gold watch with theatrical impatience. "We are running behind, and I have a board meeting. Let's make this brief. I assume you have a functional instrument in there." The room goes cold. The board members behind him lean back, already checking their phones. To them, Maya is just a charity box to be checked, a brief interruption in a day of real music. Maya opens her case. The worn purple velvet glows under the chandeliers, revealing the scarred wood of her father's violin. "Is that a joke?" Sterling's laugh is dry and cruel. "This is a conservatory, Miss Vance, not a pawn shop. We maintain standards here. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at a community center." Maya feels the sting of tears, but she remembers the fire her mother spoke of. She doesn't back down. She lifts the violin. The battle lines are drawn. The silence that follows Professor Sterling's insult is heavy, suffocating like a tomb. In the third row, Dr. Elena Ross, the legendary violinist, narrows her eyes. She remains a silent observer, but the tension in her posture suggests she is witnessing something far more significant than a mere audition. "My father taught me that respect is earned through music, not money," Maya says, her young voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere with a quiet dignity that stops the whispering students in their tracks. Sterling's face reddens, his professional mask slipping for a split second. "Respect? You stand in the halls of Belmont with an instrument that belongs in a bonfire, wearing clothes that insult our history, and you speak of respect." He leans forward, his voice a low, dangerous hiss. "The Bach partita is a mountain. It has humbled giants. It is not a plaything for someone who learned from YouTube and library books." Maya doesn't flinch. She looks at the empty balcony, then at her mother in the back row. Sarah Vance gives a single, slow nod. "I'd like to play the Bach, please," Maya repeats. Sterling leans back, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "Fine. If you insist on a public disappointment, who am I to stop you? But remember, Miss Vance, once the bow touches the string, there is no hiding. Your truth will be laid bare for everyone to see." Maya positions the violin against her shoulder. The borrowed shirt feels heavy with sweat, and her throat is dry as desert sand. She feels the weight of 3 years of practicing in a cold apartment, the weight of her mother's double shifts, and the weight of her father's unfulfilled dreams. She closes her eyes, shutting out the marble columns, the expensive suits, and the mocking glares. She isn't in Belmont anymore. She is back in that narrow gap in her kitchen, where the only thing that matters is the vibration of the wood against her heart. The hall falls into a cathedral silence. 30 people hold their breath, waiting for the disaster they think is inevitable. Maya raises her bow. The storm is about to break. The first note emerges not with the polished sheen of a conservatory graduate, but with a raw, haunting purity that cuts through the perfumed air like morning light through a cracked window. It is a simple G, sustained and true, carrying a vibration so deep it seems to rattle the very foundations of the marble columns. Professor Sterling's cynical smirk falters. He leans forward, his hands gripping the mahogany podium. This isn't the amateurish scratching he expected. This is something else. Maya begins the Alamanda of Bach's Partita No. 2. Her fingers dance across the worn fingerboard of The Survivor with a mathematical precision that defies her age. But she isn't just playing notes. She is telling the story of Englewood. The bow movements are the rhythm of the night shift mopping. The crescendos are the sirens wailing outside her window. The soft, lyrical passages are her mother's tired humming at dawn. The wood of the broken violin seems to breathe. The hairline crack along its back doesn't hinder the sound, it adds a gritty, resonant texture that no $1 million Stradivarius could replicate. It is the sound of survival. In the front row, faculty members exchange stunned glances. Dr. Elena Ross slowly removes her glasses, her eyes glistening. She has heard this piece performed by the world's greatest virtuosos, but she has never heard it played with this much necessity. As Maya transitions into the saraband, a profound silence engulfs the hall. It is a meditation on loss and longing. Tears begin to well in the eyes of the board members who, moments ago, were checking their gold watches. The wealthy students in the back row stop whispering. Sarah Wellington, a girl who has known only privilege, finds herself gripping her silk dress, her heart aching for a struggle she's never known but can suddenly feel through Maya's music. Maya's eyes remain closed. She is no longer a girl in a borrowed shirt. She is a channel for something divine. The music builds, layer by layer, until the final movement, the giga, explodes into the hall. It is a whirlwind of technical brilliance, a defiant roar of a soul refusing to be silenced. When the final note fades, it lingers in the air like a ghost. Maya stands still, her bow held aloft, her chest heaving. 410 heartbeats, there is no sound. No breathing. Just the electric echo of a miracle. Then, the silence is shattered not by a snicker, but by a single, thunderous clap. Dr. Elena Ross is on her feet. The roar of applause from Dr. Elena Ross is like a physical force. One by one, the other faculty members rise, their chairs scraping against the marble floor, a sound that used to signal dismissal, but now signals a revolution. Professor Julian Sterling remains frozen. His expensive silk tie feels like it's choking him. He stares at Maya, then at the survivor in her hands. He had spent 30 years teaching that excellence required a pedigree, a certain look, and a certain zip code. In 8 minutes, a 12-year-old girl in a borrowed shirt has burned his curriculum to the ground. Dr. Ross walks onto the stage. She doesn't look at the board. She looks only at Maya. She reaches out and gently touches the taped-up scroll of the violin. "Young lady," Dr. Ross says, her voice trembling with an emotion she hasn't felt in decades. "I have played with every great orchestra on this planet. But today, I didn't just hear music. I heard a life. I heard a heart that refuses to break." She turns to Sterling, her gaze sharp as a surgical blade. "Julian, you asked if this instrument was functional. I think it's the only instrument in this room that actually has a soul. The rest of us? We've been playing notes. She's been playing the truth." The silence that falls over Sterling is deafening. He looks at the board members, who are now looking at him with a mixture of pity and disappointment. He looks at Sarah Vance in the back row, whose head is held high, her eyes wet but triumphant. The wealthy students who had snickered earlier are now staring at their own feet. Sarah Wellington, the girl with the designer dress, is the first to stand and clap, her face flushed with genuine humility. The walls of prejudice didn't just crack, they collapsed. "Mr. Carter," Dr. Ross says, addressing the board chairman, "if we do not grant this girl a full scholarship, including a new instrument and a seat in the masterclass in Vienna, then this academy no longer deserves the name Belmont. Sterling finally stands. He approaches Maya slowly. His authority has evaporated, replaced by a raw, painful realization. He looks at Maya's hands, the calluses, the scars, and finally, he sees them for what they are, the marks of a master. 2 years later, the Chicago Symphony Center is bathed in a warm, golden glow. The air is thick with anticipation, and every seat in the house is filled. In the front row, Sarah Vance sits wearing a dress of deep navy silk. Her hands, once cracked from industrial bleach, are now resting peacefully in her lap. Beside her sits a man whose presence would have seemed impossible 2 years ago, Julian Sterling. He is no longer the gatekeeper of prejudice, but the director of the Marcus Vance Memorial Program, a scholarship founded to find the Mayas of the world before they are silenced by poverty. Backstage, Maya Vance stands with a full-sized, professional violin, a gift from the Academy. But beside it, in a glass display case, rests the survivor. The cracks are professionally sealed, its wood polished to a soft gleam. It is no longer a symbol of poverty, but a monument to perseverance. As Maya walks onto the stage, the applause is deafening. She is no longer the girl in a borrowed shirt. She is a maestro. She looks at the audience, at the faces of every color and every background, and she realizes that music didn't just change her life, it changed the room. It forced a city to look past its assumptions. She positions her violin. The first note of the chaconne rises, soaring toward the high ceilings. It is a sound that carries the echoes of Englewood, the strength of her mother, and the dreams of a father who knew that a broken violin could still play a perfect truth. Because in the end, talent doesn't check your zip code. It only checks your heart. And when we stop judging the book by its cover, we finally get to hear the masterpiece inside. As the final notes of Maya's violin fade into the rafters of the Grand Hall, a profound truth remains long after the applause has ended. Maya Vance didn't just play a masterpiece that day at the Belmont Academy. She played a mirror to our own souls. She showed us that the most beautiful music doesn't always come from the most polished instruments, and the greatest potential isn't always found in the most prestigious zip codes. We live in a world that often tries to tell us who belongs and who doesn't. We're taught to judge by the clothes on a person's back, the color of their skin, or the cracks in their violin case. But as Maya proved to Professor Sterling and to every one of us, talent doesn't check your background before it chooses you. The real tragedy isn't a broken violin. It's a closed mind. When we allow prejudice to be our conductor, we miss out on the extraordinary symphonies that walk among us every day. We miss the geniuses hiding in the shadows of our assumptions. So, the next time you see someone who doesn't seem to fit the part, remember Maya. Remember that a scar on a violin can add a depth of sound that perfection can never touch. Let us lead with curiosity instead of judgment, and kindness instead of condescension. Because when we finally stop looking at the exterior and start listening to the heart, we don't just find great musicians. We find our shared humanity.